Discussing a live manhunt underway in Essex as we speak. It's underway to find the Epping Hotel migrant sex attacker after he was accidentally released from jail. Hadush Kibatu was meant to be sent to an immigration centre to be deported, but it's understood that Kibatu was accidentally freed on Friday morning, we believe about 7 minutes past midday, from HMP Chelmsford. Justice Secretary David Lammy is said to be appalled at the wrongful release of the Epping Hotel asylum seeker, adding the convicted sex attacker must be deported for his crimes and not on our streets. Well, he is on our streets. He has been on our streets loose since midday today. Remember, if you are struggling to place this horrible creature. He was part of the group of young men who crossed the channel illegally and were held at the Bell Hotel in Epping, where all those protests have been going on every summer. He was jailed for sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl, a schoolgirl, in her school uniform. Showed no remorse, didn't even appear to comprehend that 14-year-old girls in this country had their own rights and it's illegal to do that, and also assaulted a woman as well at the same time. In any case, he is now on the run with a manhunt underway. Joining me now is GB News national reporter Will Godley. Will, can you bring us up to date on any more developments, please?
Yeah, Dawn, obviously people be very, very concerned to hear that this manhunt underway across Essex as police seek to find this convicted sex offender and also to understand and establish exactly what went wrong. GB News understands that a prison service officer has been removed from duties after Hadush Kibatu is now on our streets rather than in a Home Office deportation facility. He had been in HMP Chelmsford for about 4 weeks after being sentenced on the 23rd of September. But today, now he is on the streets. And I was speaking in the last hour or so to a lady who filmed a video earlier on this morning, before we knew any of this had happened. She believed it to be Hadush Kibatu. She started filming it at 12:07 on the streets of Chelmsford, and this is what she saw. There, a man that the lady who filmed that video, a 48-year-old Chelmsford resident with 2 teenage daughters, believed to be Hadush Kibatu. Seen, the man in that video seen to be wearing a grey tracksuit, also holding possessions in a clear plastic bag, speaking to people there as well. The lady told me she didn't understand what they were saying, but seemed to be getting directions on where to go. Now, that video was filmed. We've seen the metadata at 12:07 on Chelmsford High Street outside Pret-a-Manger and a shoe shop called Shoe. And the lady said she saw him there for about 5 to 10 minutes before the man in the video walked off Chelmsford High Street and onto Duke Street, which leads towards the train station. She followed him for a couple of minutes before being worried for her own safety, walking out of Chelmsford city centre towards the train station, following this man that she believed to be dangerous, and so left him there when he was walking around Chelmsford Cathedral. Now, that was all this morning at 12:07, the video there filmed, but she was telling me on the phone she was incredibly worried because of the fact she has 2 teenage daughters, and of course Hadush Kibatu, convicted after sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl in Epping, and of course sparking widespread protests throughout the summer in Epping. He was staying at the Bell Hotel, and of course a huge number of protests happening there. The lady who filmed that video has now spoken to 999 after being made aware this evening that Hadush Kibatu is on the streets in Britain, and she told me that the Police officers speaking to her on 999 said they've received similar reports as well of a man in grey tracksuit bottoms and tracksuit also walking through Chelmsford. The prison service have released a statement this evening in which they've said, "We are urgently working with police to return an offender to custody following a release in error at HMP Chelmsford. Public protection is our top priority and we have urgently launched an investigation into this incident." The Justice Secretary, David Lammy, has said he's appalled at the release in error at HMP Chelmsford and he's launched an urgent investigation to establish exactly how this has happened. Now, we've sent that video on to the Ministry of Justice as they continue that investigation. But for now, a number of worried residents in Chelmsford and I'm sure, Dawn, across the country.
Indeed. Thank you very much. That's Will Godley there, our GB News national reporter, with the latest on this escaped prisoner, basically, accidentally released. Lots of you are getting in touch, by the way, saying you don't believe this was an accident. I'm not sure what you're implying, but please do keep those messages coming in. gbnews.com/your say. Have your say on what you're thinking about this story. OK, now let's speak to former Metropolitan Police Detective Shabnam Chowdhury. Shabnam, good to see you. Always good to talk to you. Shabnam, this is an absolute horror show, an embarrassment from start to finish for the authorities. What do you make of it?
Yeah, exactly. Nail on the head. A complete and utter embarrassment for the prison services, for sure. Serious mistake made there. Unfortunately, we do often get people that are released by accident or that they don't go back to prison. But when we're looking at something that is so high profile as this case, let's not forget, this guy is a sex offender. As you've said, he sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl. He also assaulted her mother. He has been the subject of a hotel that has been subject to a number of protests outside that hotel for a long period of time. And the people of Epping, which is not very far from where I live, are going to be understandably worried about it. And I have to say, hats off to that lady, because if that is him, then that is very, very observant of her to have picked that up before it had even hit the news. So let's hope that police and the authorities, because they will be working very, very hard at trying to establish a timeline from the minute he was released to where he might possibly be right now.
OK, Shabnam, talk me through what the police will be doing. I mean, we understood this happened at 7 minutes past midday today. It is now 8 minutes past 7. So talk me through what the police would have been doing this afternoon.
Well, given the fact that it's a high-profile case, they would have appointed a senior officer to actually establish a team, a manhunt team. They will be sending his photographs across. They'll be checking CCTV. They'll be sending those pictures to local officers in their vehicles on foot patrol in the local area. I wouldn't be surprised if they've increased foot patrols around the Epping area, around the Bell Hotel, and there'll be some inquiries around that. Those two individuals that were speaking to this man is believed to be Kibati. They will try to locate those two witnesses to see what the conversation was about, what he was asking from them. They'll also be working very closely with the prison services. They'll want to know, was he released with any cash? What did he have with him? Did he have a mobile phone, for example? He would have been released with a bag, as you'd seen, something similar to that, with all his worldly possessions in it. I think the good thing here is that he doesn't have or have had established any community ties. So it's very possible that he'll head back towards the Bell Hotel. He doesn't necessarily know the area, but he also knows that he has been released by accident. He will be very, very well aware of that because he will have been expected to go to a secure immigration centre before he's deported. So really what he should have done was handed himself in. Clearly that's not the case, so this will be a very high-profile manhunt.
Shabnam, interesting. That was going to be my next question, actually. He was only in the country 8 days when he carried out these assaults back in the summer. So he doesn't really know, much about the countryside. He won't have many friends here. The chances are he will head back to Epping, which is pretty much the only place he actually knows.
Yes, that's correct. And that is why the Chief Constable of Essex Police has declared this a critical instance. Let's not forget, you've got a victim at the heart of this. You've got a family that live in that particular area. Police would have been in touch with the family to let them know, even though they may well have seen it on the news, they will have spoken to the family, and they may well appoint a local liaison officer to the victim, because she will need some reassurance. She's probably petrified now because of the fact that she felt safe at the point that he was subject to being detained, and now here he is released back into the public domain, accidentally or otherwise. He's still out there on the loose. So there will be concerns about the public, and that there will be some real issues around them making sure that they want to know what the police are doing, and let's hope that they do keep the people of Epping informed as to what the process is and what the progress is. And they'll also be appealing to the local community in the case that he's cited absolutely anywhere. And I suspect, although they might not class him as a high risk, he still will be of some risk, whether it's to himself, whether it's to others. So not to necessarily approach him, but to call 999 immediately.
Shabnam, thank you very much. Shabnam, just quickly, you mentioned you live in not far from the area, in the area. I don't know if you have children or not, if you have daughters. How worried would you be if you did have young girls at home?
Well, I've got a lot of nephews and nieces, so I've got the girls that, family that wander around in different areas in the Essex area. Of course, I'm concerned about their safety, not just by him, but also by predatory men in any case. So, they always try to keep themselves safe, but people in Epping will, without a doubt, be concerned about this. And don't be surprised if tomorrow there are some further protests around what has actually unfolded today. Let's hope the police actually catch this individual and he gets deported as soon as possible.
Yeah, indeed. Wise words. Thank you very much, Shabnam Chowdhury. That's former Metropolitan Police detective. And, of course, it's a Friday night. I mean, young girls going out on a Friday night. I mean, it's dark early. Well, let's hope everyone stays safe. We don't know what this person's going to do, but quite clearly hasn't handed himself in, has he? So he's obviously up to no good. Now, another breaking line now. Chelmsford MP Mary Goldman has called for a rapid public inquiry into how sex offender Habush Gabaslezi Kibatu was accidentally released from jail once a manhunt to find him is over. In a statement, the Lib Dem MP said, "I am closely following developments and I'm in contact with the police and the prison. The police must do everything they can to ensure that this man is returned to custody immediately so that he is deported at once. Once the manhunt is over, there must be a full, rapid public inquiry into how this happened. This is utterly unacceptable and has potentially put my constituents in danger. I expect answers from the prison service." Well, we all know how rapidly we have national inquiries in this country, don't we? We don't, basically. Joining me now is former Home Office Minister Norman Baker. Norman, good to see you. Thank you very much for joining me. Norman, what do you make of this story?
Well, it's an absolute horror show, isn't it? And I guess of all the tens of thousands of people who are in prison across the country, the government would let this person out less than any other person, because this is a very high-profile case. Of course, it was subject to the massive demonstrations in Epping, and it's an absolute disgrace that he's out on the streets. I hope the police are tracking his mobile phone, because I think that if he was released by mistake, presumably people thought that he should be released, and therefore he'd have his possessions returned to him. And if he had a mobile phone, that should be able to be tracked by the police, and that's a way of catching him and finding out where he is. I don't think he'll have gone back to Epping, by the way. I mean, Chelmsford to Epping is quite a long way, and he wouldn't know how to get there. There's no obvious public transport link between Chelmsford and Epping. There's no train. Epping's on the central line of the underground, and Chelmsford's on the national rail system into Liverpool Street. So I think it's more likely he'll be somewhere in Chelmsford. And obviously the MP for Chelmsford, my Lib Dem colleague, is absolutely furious about what's happened, and quite rightly so. But it's important he is returned to custody. It's important he's deported as soon as possible. And we need to find out how this happened, because I don't think it's very common, actually, for people to be released by mistake. But if you're going to release someone by mistake, you don't choose this guy.
Not at all. Norman, stay with us. We have some breaking news for you now. Essex Police have said that Habush Kibatu boarded a London-bound train at Chelmsford railway station at 12:41 today, following his release from prison in Error. OK, so, Norman, are you still there? Yes,
indeed,
Norman.
yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
it does sound like what you were saying just now, that he was unlikely to go back to Epping, which is pretty much the only place he knows. It was only in the country 8 days when he committed his horrific crimes. It sounds now like that he's heading into London. And Norman, we all know that once you get into London, you can just disappear.
Yes, you can disappear. It may well be that he's got Ethiopian connections in London that we don't know about. Maybe he's using his mobile phone to contact them, in which case the police ought to be able to track him down. But you're right. I mean, London's a city of, what, 10 million people? And he can easily vanish in that city. And it's more difficult to find him than it would be in, say, in Chelmsford. So, you know, it's going to be a manhunt which goes way beyond Chelmsford. It now involves the Metropolitan Police.
As you said, it's an incredibly high-profile case, and when we know that prisoners are released by accident, but to release one with this profile after the whole summer of protests we had at the Bell Hotel in Epping is beyond unbelievable. I mean, you really couldn't make this up. But, Norman, we keep coming back to the fact that this man should not be in the country in the first place. It now has to be surely time that governments, all governments, start putting the safety of women and girls in this country before men coming here illegally in these boats.
Well, I mean, I used to, in my Home Office days, I was a minister with responsibility for tackling violence against women and children. You know, there's plenty of horrific crimes go on. Some from people who come into the country, but plenty more, I'm sorry to say, from people who were born here. Of all colours.
Well, you know what, Norman? You know what, Norman? Sorry to interrupt, but I hear that every time I have this conversation with anybody, usually men, to be fair, they always say to me, yes, but there are men in this country that commit sexual assaults and rapes as well. Yes, of course there are. Of course we all know that, right? OK, it is not just migrants that do this. But we have men already here. Why on earth do we need to import more? I keep coming back to that. Why do we need to import more when we already have them here?
Well, we don't need to import more, quite obviously, and anyone who has got Well, the people are not importing them, they're arriving without invitation, if you like. They're coming on small boats. But clearly people who are identified as sexual predators of any sort should be deported as soon as possible. And one of the criticisms I've had of the Home Office for some time is that the time between someone arriving, whether they've been invited or not, and actually being deported when they shouldn't be here is far too long, far too long. And one of the things that we have to sort out in this country is getting people out of the country very quickly who shouldn't be here. And that's not what has been happening so far. In fact, under the last government, I have to say, the policy under their breath, sotto voce, was actually to delay dealing with people because they thought that was a deterrent to people coming here if they were delayed in terms of not being able to, unable to work, unable to be satisfied and to settle down. They thought that would stop them coming. That was a policy. It's completely wrong. It's the opposite policy we need.
OK, Norman, thank you very much. That's Norma Baker, their former Lib Dem Home Secretary. Thank you very much. Now, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has just given a statement on this accidental release today. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
We need a public inquiry into how this dangerous illegal immigrant, who is also a child sex offender, got released. We also need an urgent apology from Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood and Justice Secretary David Lammy, who have presided over this fiasco. It is an absolute disgrace that this incompetent Labour government has allowed this dangerous man out onto our streets, and this evening he is posing a risk to children around Essex.
You've sort of mentioned it there, but what does this say about government competence when it comes to these sort of issues?
Well, this Labour government is catastrophically incompetent. This week alone, they've let back into the country somebody they should have removed. We've got the China spying scandal, the collapse of the rape gang inquiry, and now this incompetent, inept Labour government have let out a dangerous sex offender who, frankly, should have been deported. We've also seen record-ever numbers of illegal immigrants entering the country so far this year. This government is catastrophically inept and incompetent, and this episode is just the latest example of that, and it's putting children at risk.
This is someone who was at an asylum hotel. You know, under the Tories, asylum hotels went up hugely. Do you take some responsibility for this? Well,
in the last year and a half of Conservative government, the use of asylum hotels approximately halved. If that trend had continued, by now there wouldn't be any asylum hotels. But unfortunately, the numbers in asylum hotels under Labour have gone up, and the number of illegal immigrants entering the country have gone up as well, because the Labour government is too weak to stop illegal immigration, and they are too weak and incompetent to deal with dangerous sex offenders like this man.
Are you concerned about what this says about the prison system? I mean, we only have, there was only one officer, and there was only one police officer, and they were taken off the duties. What do you think it says about the police system?
I think it raises serious concerns about the system this Labour government is presiding over. Clearly there was inadequate supervision around this release, but this man shouldn't have been in the country in the first place. In my view, all illegal immigrants should be deported within a week of arrival, either back to their country of origin if possible, or a safe third country like Rwanda if not, but the Labour government are too weak to take the measures necessary to do that, and cases like this are the tragic consequence.
Under the Tories, prison officer numbers were cut by thousands. Do you bear some responsibility?
Well, it's the Labour government and Labour ministers who are presiding over this system. They've been in power well over a year now. The last government left record ever police officer numbers, catching more criminals, but it is the Labour government now presiding over falling police numbers and this catastrophic incompetence letting out a dangerous sex offender onto our streets.
Perfect.
That fully covers it, doesn't it?
That was our Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp there with a statement on this developing story. The manhunt continues for Hadush Kibatu, the Ethiopian national who was in the Bell Hotel at Epping, sentenced for a year for sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl and another woman, and was released accidentally, that's what they're saying, from Chelmsford prison today. That happened at 12:07 today. We are now led to believe that he boarded a London-bound train round about 20 to 1 today, which would have got him into London at about 1:18 today. So thank you for the brilliant production team here for looking at the train timetables. But you get into London and you disappear, and as we know, there is a very large... This chap is from Ethiopia, and there's a very large Ethiopian community in London. He was only here a week, 8 days, when he committed these offences, so whether he knows anyone or not, we don't know. OK, I still have my panel with me, sitting here very patiently. Campaigns Director at Restore Britain, Charlie Downs, and Labour Councillor Sebastian Salick. Sebastian, let's come to you first on this one. The more you hear about the story, the worse it gets. We now believe that this person may be in London, and as you know, you live in London, you're a councillor in London.
Yeah.
It's a big place. People disappear.
Do you know what? I challenge you on that one. I think it's a positive that he's come to London.
Oh,
it
right,
is
okay,
one of the most surveyed cities in the world. There are hundreds of thousands of security cameras. Much easier to find someone in London than if he'd gone to ground out in the countryside out in rural Essex somewhere. So I think this is a positive. The question is, though, this happened at 1:20 this afternoon. What are we now? 7:20. He's been gone for a long time. You would imagine he doesn't know his way around London. If he was only in the country for 8 days before coming here, it's a maze of a city, isn't it? It's not easy to find your way around if you don't know where you're going. And presumably he doesn't know anyone here either, or certainly anyone who's willing to take him in, because the penalties for that are huge, and I don't imagine anyone would want to risk that.
Yes, we don't know. What did you make about Chris Philp saying, and not the first one, about the inquiry? Now, I would just go back to the victims of the grooming gangs. Their inquiry is being pushed back another year now. We've got the infected blood scandal, we've got the post office. I mean, we're not very good at inquiries in this country, are we?
No, look, I think it's fair to say we want answers. We want to know why did this happen and how can we stop it from happening again. But it was disappointing to hear from Chris Philp just a little bit of political playing around, really. This is the kind of situation where you want to rally around in the best interests of the people who are affected by this, and it just seemed a little bit of an opportunity that he took there to have a punch at the government that maybe wasn't that constructive.
What do you make of that point, Charlie? I mean, it's a fair point, isn't it? I mean, personally, I'm just sick and tired of, this government going, it was all their fault, and this government, the previous government going, well, they should have sorted it out by now. I just want to make sure that women and girls in this country are safe.
I've got to say, that is a really important point here, because I have thought for a very long time, to be honest, that the issue of illegal immigration and the egregious problems that it causes is certainly a huge problem and has a great many victims. However, there's many other problems that are facing our country. And because illegal immigration is so self-evidently egregious and so kind of at an emotive level for most people, they look at these stories, they look at the images and stories and statistics around the boats crossing the channel, and they feel angry. I mean, and if, for that reason, it's actually a very useful kind of political football for parties on all sides to kick around, because it gives them this issue that is so cut and dry that they can talk about all day, and perhaps we are ourselves guilty of this, when actually there are many, many other problems facing this country that are far more complex than this one.
Indeed, yeah, interesting point. OK, let's go and talk to GB News national reporter Will Godley for any updates. Will.
The last few moments, we've had an update from Essex Police taking the lead on this investigation. I can read you now what they have said. They said, "We were informed by the prison service at 12:57 p.m. today of an error this morning surrounding the release of an individual. As a result of that, we have launched a search operation to locate them, and we're working closely with partner agencies. These fast-paced inquiries have shown that the man boarded a London-bound train at Chelmsford railway station today at 12:41, and I can tell you that that London-bound train leaving Chelmsford at 12:41 is around 37 minutes. It gets into London at about 1:15, and on the way stops at Shenfield and Stratford as well as it heads into London. No word from the police if they know where Hadish Khabatu got off, or indeed where he did get off. But of course, this information means that their search investigation will be expanding dramatically from Chelmsford to further afield and now into London as well, where of course there are a huge number of other transport links available to Mr. Khabatu, who of course was in HMP Chelmsford after being sentenced for sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl. But the questions here really are, why did it take so long for the police to be made aware of the fact that this man had been released by accident from HMP Chelmsford, hearing at 12:57? That is nearly 20 minutes after he boarded that London-bound train, and nearly an hour after residents in Chelmsford saw Mr. Khabatu, or who they believed to be this man, seen in prison tracksuits carrying belongings in a clear plastic bag on Chelmsford High Street. And here's a video that GB News has obtained of that moment. Well, the woman who filmed that video at 12:07 today on Chelmsford High Street said she saw the man there in that video standing there speaking to people for about 5 to 10 minutes before heading down Duke Street in Chelmsford, which is the street heading to the train station. We now know from Essex Police he boarded a train heading to London at 12:41. Essex Police went on to say that they understand that the public will be concerned and are working to assure the people that they are working to urgently locate this individual. But this, of course, search area now much bigger, as they know that Mr. Khabatu could be in London or elsewhere now. Some what are we now? 7:30. Some well, since he was seen in Chelmsford High Street, 7.5 hours on. Essex Police continuing that investigation at speed, aware of very concerned people across Britain this evening.
Well, that was very quick thinking of that lady who took that bit of film footage there, wasn't it, on her camera, on a mobile phone, I'm assuming. Why did she do that? Was she suspicious, or did she recognise him from the original stories about the protest at the Bell Hotel?
Yeah, well, she's a Chelmsford local. She's a mum of two. She's in her mid-40s, and she's a mum of two teenage girls. And she said that she'd been following this case, of course, sparking widespread protests outside Epping Hotel, where Mr. Khabatu had been staying when he sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl, which he was sentenced to, and where he was staying in Chelmsford. She said once she's very good at recognising faces, and so she immediately immediately thought that this man could be Mr. Kibatu, and that's why she started filming. She said it's never something she would normally do, but in this instance, she felt like she had to. She didn't really know why she had to do that. But of course, when the news came out this evening that Mr. Kibatu had accidentally been released from prison when he was supposed to be going to a Home Office deportation facility, that's when she got in touch with 999 to tell them that she'd cited someone she thought to be Mr. Kibatu, and that's when 999 call handlers told her that they were made aware of a number of other similar sightings in Chelmsford this afternoon. But she said also she was on high alert because her daughters had been telling her of a number of other occasions when people had been coming up to them. Her daughters are 15 and 18 years old in the UK and abroad, making them really uncomfortable. So she's very, very aware of what's happening in the world at the moment. That's making teenage girls and women in general very, very uncomfortable. And so that's why she was particularly concerned. And she followed the man heading down Duke Street, who she filmed in that video, for a couple of minutes, but didn't dare go any further towards a railway station because she started fearing for her own safety. But that is the man that she believed to be Mr. Kibatu, standing, talking to a bunch of people on Chelmsford High Street at 12:07 this afternoon, just half an hour or so before boarding a train from Chelmsford to London, and the police now appealing for anyone who has any other information to get in touch with them immediately. OK, thank you very much, Will. That is GBN News national reporter Will Godley. Let's talk to my panel quickly on this one. Charlie, the thing I can't understand is the time frame of this now. I mean, that lady took that video just gone midday today. But, you know, the general public weren't made aware of what was happening until tea time today. Surely if we'd have been given more information by the police, maybe we could have stopped this person earlier?
Yeah, I mean, this entire story represents so many different points of failure, and that is certainly one of them. I mean, there's just so many questions, and we can sit on here and speculate all we want, but there is an answer to why this was allowed to happen. There is an answer as to why the public weren't informed that this dangerous, convicted sexual paedophilic predator was out on the streets. And look, there are those online, you've alluded to this already, Dawn, that are suggesting that, in fact, the release of this man was not an accident. Now, I'm not going to go down that road. I don't know that there's any evidence to suggest that that is the case. But if you wanted to create the conditions and to have an event that would spark, basically, you know, it could certainly act as a, you know, a kind of spark for more of the kinds of scenes that we saw outside the Bell Hotel earlier this year, and indeed across the country. Well, this is what you would do.
Why would you want that?
I'm not saying that the government does want that, but, you know,
I mean, there are so many conspiracy theories about, you know, even saying good morning to someone these days can cause a conspiracy theory. We know that, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
What does that say, by the way, Dawn? That people are so distrustful of authority that they are prepared to believe that they have allowed out a literal convicted paedophile, you know, as an actual decision.
I think that's a really interesting point now. Not the conspiracy theories so much, Sebastian, but the fact that now people have such a distrust of people in authority. I mean, you are a councillor, so you are in authority to a certain extent. I mean, but the public, and certainly women and girls now, have a huge distrust of the police. I mean, you know, we all sort of like know what's happened in the past with the police not being trusted. Why do you think that is, and what can we do about it?
Well, I think it's down to repeated failures. That trust only erodes because there are moments where it is shown that you can't trust the police. And I think of Sarah Everard, for example, which I think is a golden example of a time when a policeman just couldn't be trusted to great tragedy. It's really, really heartbreaking when it happens, and it requires a great amount of work to rebuild that trust on behalf of whichever institution abused it in the first place. The police is still doing a lot of work around that. I think there was a lot of institutional distrust. We see, sadly, certain people from certain backgrounds picked out and stopped and searched or whatever else, which is an issue. And I can understand why some communities may feel slightly less trusting of the police than others. If those
communities are more likely to be committing the crimes that they are, you know, looking out for someone for, then surely stopping and searching them makes sense.
Not necessarily. I mean, I talk to my black friends about this, and I'm really struck by the stories they tell me and the number of times they've been stopped and searched, and these are perfectly upstanding members of society who have never done anything wrong. I think it's unfair to target them disproportionately based on any kind of vague ideas that people might have about who commits what.
OK, just coming back to you quickly on this one, Charlie, about the lack of trust. I mean, obviously, the other story in the papers today, we were going to be debating it. We're not now, obviously, because of this live-breaking story. But the grooming gangs. The grooming gangs inquiry has been potentially kicked down the road for another year now. Again, an issue of trust. Young girls who've been abused went to the police. They went to the council care workers who were meant to be guardians looking after them, and they were abused by those people.
Yes, I think there's a few things I'd like to unpack here. The first is that I don't think that the majority of people distrust the police because of things like, the Sarah Everard case and the, allegations of, institutional racism or whatever else. I think it is the far more clear-cut examples of police forces covering up, Pakistani Muslim rape gangs across the country for a number of decades, which is now a very mainstream issue, and it's one of the darkest and greatest betrayals that this country has ever seen in its centuries of history. And on the inquiry itself, I think this is very interesting because as you may know, Dawn, and indeed you, Sebastian, we are running an independent rape gang inquiry. My boss, Rupert Lowe, started that up several months ago, and we've been gathering evidence and witness testimonies for the last few months, and we will be having our hearings across 10 days in the beginning of 2026. And what we're finding is that there is a tremendous appetite on the part of survivors and experts on the issues around the grooming gangs to come forward and to, make their testimony public, to actually speak the truth about what has happened with this issue. So what does it say? That the government, that the official government inquiry can't even hold on to any of those survivors without them resigning and calling for for a greater degree of honesty and for people who they feel they can trust more to be heading it up, unlike, people like Jess Phillips, who many people, I think is deeply bound up in this issue. These accusations that she's been part of the cover-up have followed her around for a very long time. So it's no surprise that 5 survivors have signed a letter calling for her to resign as safeguarding minister if they are to return to the inquiry.
There have also been survivors who have said that they want her involved, and she's not here, obviously, to defend herself as well. If you are just joining us, by the way, we are talking about the ongoing manhunt for Habush Kibatu, the Ethiopian national who was from the Bell Hotel in Epping, was found guilty of sexually assaulting 2 women, one a 14-year-old girl earlier this year, and has been, he was being moved from prison in Chelmsford and was let go, released accidentally, and is now on the run. So that's the story. It's still being looked for. That happened at midday today. It is now coming up to 20 to 8 on a Friday night. We know that he got a train into London from Chelmsford, so God only knows where he is now. Joining us now, in any case, is Head of Crime and Justice at Policy Exchange, David Spencer. David, I mean, a mess of just cock-ups from start to finish as far as the authorities are concerned. Meanwhile, we don't know where this person is. He is dangerous. The judge described him as disgusting and sickening behaviour. Sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl while she was in her school uniform and has had no remorse about doing so. What do you make of where we are tonight?
Good evening. Well, this is about as shocking an example of failure as it's possible to see in the prison service. Policy Exchange said only earlier this year that the prison service was in crisis. And this is just yet another example of the crisis that the prison service is in. I think as well, one of the things I saw earlier on was that a junior prison officer had been relieved from their duties as a result of what's happened here. Actually, my biggest concern here is that this is not just an error by a relatively junior member of staff. This is a systemic problem within the prison service, which is representative of the crisis they're in. And let me just give you a number here, that this last year there were 262 prison releases in error by the prison service. So that's 262 criminals who should be not released, who the prison service did release last financial year. And believe it or not, that's a number which doubled from the previous year. So what we're seeing here is just not just the mistake of one person, one relatively junior prison officer. This goes right to the very top of the prison service, this level of failure, because in the last year, the number of prison releases in error has doubled, has gone up twofold, and that means that this is part of a massive crisis in the prison service, and it goes right to the very top. So what I suspect we will see is an urgent question in the House of Commons on Monday, and what I would very much hope to hear from the Secretary of State is a couple of things. First of all, how on earth did this happen? And second of all, who is it, frankly, that's going to take the fall for it? And that better not be just some junior prison officer at the bottom of the heap. This needs to be someone at the very top of the prison service who takes responsibility of this. And my other concern is that what we'll hear from the Secretary of State on Monday or over the weekend is a promise for a review. And frankly, a review is not good enough, because if I remember rightly, we're still waiting for the publication of the review into the escape of the prisoner Daniel Khalifa from Wandsworth Prison. And you'll remember since he was released, he was convicted of espionage and terrorism offences. Now, we're still waiting to see for the independent review that was conducted into his release. So I'm afraid I've got no confidence that if the prison service is allowed to get away with the announcement of a review, that we'll see it any time soon. So what we need to see, if there is an urgent question in the House of Commons on Monday, is what happened and who's going to be held accountable for this.
Yeah, as you say, so far we have a junior prison officer who has been potentially thrown under the bus. We have had Home Secretaries resigning over such issues before in the past. In my world, I'm a former newspaper editor. The buck stopped with me. The buck stops at the top. The top of this one is the Justice Secretary, David Lammy. Do you think he has questions to answer on this one? And should he indeed maybe consider resigning himself?
Well, there are undoubtedly questions to answer, and not just by ministers here, but by very senior officials. And, this is an operational agency. Some people call this an operational law enforcement agency, and I think that's about right. So this is not just about ministers. This is about very senior officials at the very top of the prison service who need to be held to account here. Certainly, I'm willing and very happy to listen to the explanation that will be given, no doubt in Parliament on Monday about this, but there are certainly questions to answer.
OK, thank you very much, David. That is Head of Crime and Justice at Policy Exchange, David Spencer. OK, let's come back to the panel on this. I still have Sebastian Salick and Charlie Downs with me. Heads rolling. So far, we have heard that a junior prison officer, always the way, isn't it, Sebastian? It's like, get rid of someone that's junior so no one really notices. Do you think we should go higher than that?
We don't know what's happened yet. It's too early to say. I wouldn't want to be making any calls on that at this stage. They haven't found the guy yet. But certainly someone has to take the rap and it has to reflect the severity of the situation. I've been very surprised, and I think many at home will be as well, to hear how many people are released. And I think that really speaks to the state of the prison service that has been chronically underfunded year after year after year. And like most things in this country, it comes back to austerity and it comes back to the fact that we just don't invest in our institutions. So can we really be that surprised to hear that staff are stretched, that people aren't able to do their jobs properly, if they just don't have the resources?
I mean, you are a Labour councillor, Sebastian. I mean, we heard that figure there, 262 accidentally released last year. But you are a Labour councillor. Now, from what we're hearing from the current Labour government, their plan for the justice system is to release prisoners early on tags because there's not enough room in the system. Doesn't sound that healthy to me.
But it sounds sensible if you're coming in, you're inheriting this situation and you're thinking very, very quickly, what can we do? What are the quick wins? What's the low-hanging fruit? You can't magic up a prison overnight, much as we wish we could do.
We magicked up Nightingale hospitals. What's wrong with Nightingale prisons? Building these up, getting them staffed. I know we've got a problem with staffing as well, OK. But, I mean, what's wrong with doing that? We can't have people being released into the community on tags.
Well, I mean, look, a call is made on who is released. Clearly, you're not going to release someone who is a danger to the community.
There was a domestic abuser who was released, who went and knocked on his ex-wife's door.
Sure, and I don't think anybody is condoning that. But the point is, prisons have been underfunded year after year after year after year, and we're at the point now where these things are going to happen, sadly, because the resources just aren't there to deal with it.
OK, Charlie, what do you make of this one?
Well, there's also the question of supply and demand, because I agree that austerity has been a damaging thing, I think, but there is also the factor of immigration and the simple fact that that infrastructure has not kept pace with the growth in the population that is almost solely due to mass immigration. We know, for example, that there are upwards of 10,000 foreign national offenders in our prisons right now. Why are they there? Why are we putting them up?
Which is commensurate with the proportion of foreign nationals that live in the country. So people from abroad.
Yeah, but why are they in our prisons? Why don't we just deport?
Hang on, people in prisons are not disproportionately from other countries.
I didn't say that. Well, I said that there are 10,000 of them in there that have no business being in the country because they're criminals.
Sure, but you are as likely to go to prison if you are from abroad than if you are.
Yeah, but I'm not saying that that's not the case. But
you're trying to make
the
point that the prisons are overrun with foreigners, which is just not true.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's 10,000 of them in there, and if they weren't, there'd be 10,000 extra spaces, meaning that the government wouldn't have to release sex offenders and domestic abusers and so on because there is no space. There's no reason to keep foreign nationals in our prisons if they've committed crimes on our shores. They should be deported.
Foreign nationals or people who are born abroad?
Foreign nationals. I'm talking about foreign nationals.
So what's the percentage for foreign nationals?
What, in the prisons?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have the figure, which is upwards of 10,000.
But as a percentage?
Why is that relevant, Sebastian? Address the content of what I'm saying. Why is it that we have upwards of 10,000 in our prisons when we could just deport them?
Well, because I don't believe we should go around deporting people willy-nilly. It's just not how we do things in this country. It's deeply un-British.
You don't think that we should deport foreign national offenders who are in our prisons and who are there at the taxpayers' expense? You think we should keep them in there?
It depends who they are.
And what are the criteria that would have them stay and leave?
I'm not going to sit and make justice policy for you now.
Well, look, I think that the idea that we do put up foreign national offenders in our prisons at our expense is just nonsensical. And this has to be part of the equation. And the fact that you didn't address it in your diagnosis of the problems, I think is quite revealing.
In what way?
Well, I mean, it's an article of faith that mass immigration has been only a good thing for those on the left. But I think the evidence of our own eyes is showing that it has been disastrous along every metric for this country.
Unlike you, Charlie, I don't reach for immigration as the problem, as the root, the original sin for every policy
Did I say that?
we see. Well, you've certainly done it throughout the last 2 hours. You've reached for it pretty often.
Well, it's a pretty egregious example, but it's not the only one. And in the stories that we've been talking about, it has been at the root of it, because we're talking about immigrants.
Those stories have been horrendous. Don't get me wrong. But we're talking about broad themes here, and it is completely wrong and it is completely misleading to people sitting at home to point to immigration as the root of all our ills in society. It's just not true.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying it's the root of all of our ills, but it's certainly the root of a lot of them. Like, as I said, the fact that infrastructure has not kept pace with demand, whether that's housing, whether that's prisons, whether that's the healthcare service, whether that's the roads, public transport, schools, or any other service upon which we rely as a country. They have not kept pace, and part of that is due to austerity. I'm more than happy to agree with you on that.
Yeah, we can agree on that.
But you surely must recognise the fact that when you bring in millions of people, many of whom are net dependents, and don't build infrastructure to keep pace with that growth, things are going to start grinding to a halt. You must be able to acknowledge that.
Well, of course, because we haven't been building. That is the root of the problem.
Yeah.
But isn't it convenient
but it's
to
both.
for
Surely it's both.
all of the issues in society? It's just
But
not
again,
the
you
case.
keep saying that I'm doing that, but I'm not.
You are.
I'm sorry.
We sat here for almost 2 hours now, and you've talked about immigrants at every opportunity, and we've talked about a whole range of issues.
Well, I mean, we've talked about a handful of issues today, which have focused on immigration as an issue, which I think is why it keeps coming up. But we have to be honest about the fact that mass immigration, legal and illegal, is a damaging thing for our country. And I think more and more people are just seeing that with their own eyes. They're experiencing it in their own lives, whether it's young people trying to buy housing, young parents trying to find school spaces for their children, or any other.
Hugely insulting to the legal immigrants who come here and contribute to our societies and to our economy. They are a net benefit.
OK, gentlemen, I'm going to have to leave it there for now. If you are just joining us now, we are talking about a major manhunt that's underway for the hotel migrant who sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl in Epping. He was at the Bell Hotel, has been mistakenly released from prison. Hadush Kabutu, 41, was last seen in Chelmsford this morning, about midday this morning. We believe got on a train to London, and we have had no sight of him since. It's that a major manhunt is underway. He sexually assaulted a 14-year-old child. Joining me now is retired Scotland Yard Detective Inspector Hamish Brown. Hamish, I think it's the most horrific story. We don't know where this person is. We don't know what their intentions are. What would be going on now behind the scenes at Scotland Yard? We believe it's in the Metropolitan Police area now. What would be going on?
Well, I think firstly, and I've listened very interestingly to your coverage today, it is a prison fault, and I think they've just admitted that. So it isn't for the police for them to be sort of held accountable. And I think we've got to understand the sensitivity, of course, which we do. Firstly, the person shouldn't be in the country in the first place. And secondly, the nature of the offence, sexual assault on a 14-year-old girl. So very nasty. Now, what's the police going to do about it? In the first instance, it is absolutely essential that his name and other details goes on the police national computer, and the term used is unlawfully at large, which is what he is. Now, the police have, through the media, of course, who have been very helpful, put out his picture. People will be aware of it, but they're going to look, were there any connections he has? That's highly unlikely. So I think what they're going to rely on is the good members of the public to come forward and bring up the police and say, look, I think it's him. I think the police advice will be, particularly given the nature of his index offence, is not to approach him, but to ring up the police and say, look, I think it's him, and the police will act upon. No time wasters, please, but if you're in two minds, just ring the police and they'll make a decision, and I'm sure they'll be very grateful and deal sympathetically with any calls. So let's get him back, let's move on, and leave it for the prison authorities to deal with what clearly has gone wrong.
Hamish, we believe this happened around about midday today. There was a lady on Chelmsford High Street who had the wherewithal, I mean, credit to her, to actually film this person. We believe he got on a train heading into London, arriving in London round about 18 minutes past 1 today. But the public didn't really know anything about this and what had happened until round about tea time. Why was that information not out there sooner? Because then maybe somebody on the train, somebody else would have spotted him, and maybe we could have actually got him back in prison by now.
Dawn, that's a very fair point, and it's a matter of how quickly this information, and the source is the prison service, was put out, and it's for police to act and others to act upon that. And you rightly mentioned you believe he's on a train. Presumably that was picked up through CCTV. The Metropolitan Police, apparently the train's going towards London, they'll be watching railway stations, they'll be watching the CCTV and try and trace this person as quickly as possible.
I mean, Hamish, it was a shocking statistic. 262 prisoners accidentally released last year. Are you surprised by that figure?
In some ways, no. It's quite wrong. No one should be accidentally released. Prisoners do escape, but not accidentally being released. They don't normally envisage that. And with that, he'll have very few resources, very little money, very few belongings, probably doesn't have connections here. But just a word of sympathy across the board for the prison service. Like a lot of other places within the criminal justice system, they are stretched. They're under a lot of pressure, and mistakes will happen. Regretfully, it happened here, and it will be investigated, and those who made the mistake will be brought to book.
Hamish, just very, very quickly, and finally, the fact that he hasn't handed himself in, what does that tell you about him?
Well, I would imagine partly he's totally confused because he wouldn't have expected to be released. He won't have access to TV and other media or social media outlets. So he probably doesn't know that the whole world's sort of looking for him. But yes, he shall give himself in. But public, please ring the police. Any information will be gratefully received.
Great, thank you very much. Hamish Brown, there, retired Scotland Yard detective. The Prime Minister has released a statement. The mistaken release at HMP Chelmsford is totally unacceptable. I'm appalled that it has happened and it's being investigated. Police are working urgently to track him down. My government's supporting them. The man must be caught and deported for his crimes. OK, that's me done for the night, but don't go anywhere. We're continuing this story in the very capable hands of Matt Goodwin. Here he is for you.
Well, on Friday night with me, Matt Goodwin, we're going to be looking at that bombshell story of the illegal migrant who has been accidentally freed. We're going to be hearing from a top MP on whether we should ban the burqa and a lot more besides. I'll see you in 2 minutes with the top panel.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening, this is your GB News